Hello everyone and welcome to my channel YNR Trends. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Nikki's pulse hammered against the restraints digging into her wrists, the cold bite of metal echoing the chill sliding down her spine as she stared into Matt's lifeless, hungry eyes that once looked at her with admiration and adoration, now black with obsession and revenge. Reality blurred around her in the dim warehouse light, flickering from a single bulb swinging like a pendulum overhead, mocking her helplessness. The ropes dug deeper with every tremor of her body, every desperate breath pulling against the gag-soaked cotton. She'd been here before. Not this room, not with this man, but with this demon inside herself, and in a haunting way it was familiar. Powerless, desperate, craving air and control, the old ghost of temptation whispering to numb it all with a drink. Matt's voice slithered through the silence, calm and controlled, dripping with venom as he paced, casually swirling a flask in his hand like a cat playing with a trapped mouse. "I used to think you were invincible," he hissed, pausing to let the flask's contents slosh ominously. "But everyone has a weakness. Even the great Nikki Newman." His words struck deeper than the restraints, echoing every insecurity, every relapse she'd fought tooth and nail to climb out of. He didn't need weapons. Not when he'd done his research, not when he held the thing she feared most. A return to the bottle, a return to the breakdown of everything she rebuilt. The smell hit her first, pungent, unmistakable and cruel vodka. The scent of her undoing, of nights lost and promises broken. He approached slowly, unhurried, savoring the torture, holding the flask beneath her nose like a twisted offering. Her stomach clenched violently, memories clawing through the fog. Rehab rooms with stark white lights, tears from Victor's eyes, her children's disappointment, her own trembling hands and whispered vows never to return to that darkness. Yet here she was, trapped, defenseless, fighting a battle she thought she conquered years ago. Matt sat opposite her, leaning forward, elbows on knees, studying her tremors with fascination. To him, this was power, not merely physical captivity but psychological domination. "They'll think you relapsed," he murmured with a sinister smile, tapping the flask's rim against her lips. Classic Nikki, falling apart. Poor Victor. Always cleaning up your mess. Tears spilled hot and silent as she jerked her head away, fury and fear twisting inside her. She wanted to scream that she was stronger, that she'd beaten this before, that she'd clawed her way out of hell once and she wouldn't go back, but the gag muffled every sound into a pathetic whimper. The warehouse walls absorbed her desperation. Matt rose, pacing again, ranting about the injustices he blamed on the Newmans, spinning tales of twisted revenge. To him, Nikki was the perfect pawn, the fragile thread to unravel the empire. He lifted the flask again, unscrewing the cap slowly so the scent flooded her senses, the liquid shimmering under the swinging bulb like poison and promise. She squeezed her eyes shut tight, summoning every ounce of strength, but the cravings began to whisper. Just one sip to calm the terror, to silence the panic, to escape. Her breathing quickened, chest tightening. She wasn't craving the alcohol exactly, she was craving relief. Relief from helplessness, from shame, from failure. The monster wasn't the bottle. It was what she feared it represented. Surrender. Matt watched her with sick satisfaction. "See? You want it. Even now." He leaned close, breath hot against her ear. "You always will." Those words cut deeper than knives. They targeted the one truth recovering alcoholics carry. The battle never ends, it only sleeps. Nikki's mind raced through memories. Victor's unwavering support when she was at her worst, her children begging her to get help, the countless nights staring at herself in the mirror wondering who she'd become. She wouldn't let Matt take that progress away. She wouldn't let him rewrite her story. But as hours dragged on, exhaustion gnawed at her resolve. Matt taunted, dangling the flask in front of her lips, sometimes pressing it against them, letting droplets fall teasingly down her chin. The taste, sharp, burning, ignited a war within her. She trembled violently, not from fear but from the internal struggle to fight urges clawing up from depths she'd buried. Her wrists bled against the restraints. Darkness crept in as dehydration and panic blurred her vision. She prayed silently, pleading for strength, for rescue, for anything that could stop the unraveling of her sobriety, her identity. Finally Matt untied the gag, loosening it just enough for her to speak. "There she is," he whispered, lifting the flask toward her mouth. "Say it." Ask for it. Admit what you really are. Her lips trembled, throat raw, words barely forming. She forced each syllable through clenched teeth. I am stronger than this. Matt's face contorted with rage, slamming his fist into a table, sending tools clattering across the concrete. He grabbed her jaw, forcing her mouth open, tilting the flask. The cold burn of the liquid hit her tongue, shocking every nerve. She jerked violently, choking, spitting, the back of her throat screaming for more and screaming to reject it at the same time. Her tears turned fierce, fueled by raw determination. The echoing clang of a metal door interrupted the moment. Matt froze, fury sparking in his eyes, realization dawning that his time was running out. The warehouse echoed with pounding footsteps and shouts of her name. Victor's voice, broken, panicked, powerful, pierced through the haze, anchoring her to reality, to love, to strength. Matt's desperation twisted into mania as he grabbed Nikki, dragging her toward a hidden exit, using her as leverage. She dug her heels into the floor, screaming now, voice hoarse but free. Victor! Her cry fueled Victor's rage, and the door burst open. Victor charged, eyes wild with terror and fury. The two men collided, struggling violently. The flask flew from Matt's grasp, rolling across the concrete, the liquid spilling, shining like a final temptation. Nikki stared at it, her entire body trembling, the scent intoxicating and horrifying. The battle for control, for freedom, for sobriety collided in her mind. Victor finally overpowered Matt, slamming him down, restraining him until authorities flooded in. Paramedics rushed to Nikki, untying her, wrapping blankets around her trembling frame. Victor knelt beside her, his hand cupping her cheek as tears streamed down both their faces. You're safe now, he whispered, voice fractured. But Nikki shook her head weakly. No, it's not over. It's never over. Her voice cracked with truth. She looked toward the spilled liquid, shimmering under the swinging light, then back to Victor. But I didn't let it win. And in that moment, surrounded by chaos and flashing lights, Nikki realized that survival wasn't the absence of struggle. It was the courage to keep choosing sobriety, even in the face of darkness. The warehouse faded behind her as she was guided outside, wrapped in love and support, but she knew the real battle would continue long after sirens faded. The true shock wasn't her captivity or Matt's revenge. It was the brutal reminder that sobriety wasn't a destination, but a continuous journey through shadows she'd spent her life resisting. And this night, terrifying as it was, reaffirmed the truth she had tried to forget. The fight was far from over. She closed her eyes against the piercing flash of cameras and the chaos of police, and whispered, not in defeat but in fierce promise to herself, I choose to keep fighting. The flashing red and blue lights painted the night sky in jagged strokes as Nikki was loaded into the ambulance, but even surrounded by paramedics and the steady hum of medical procedures, her mind remained trapped in the warehouse, replaying every second of Matt's taunting voice whispering her worst fears into existence. Victor stayed close, refusing to step away from her side, his hand trembling slightly as it clutched hers, the fierce protective anger in his eyes slowly dissolving into guilt. Guilt for not seeing the signs, guilt for letting Matt slip through the shadows of their world, guilt for ever believing Nikki's sobriety was invulnerable. The oxygen mask forced cold, sterile air into her lungs, grounding her, and for a moment she allowed herself to lean into the familiarity of Victor's touch, the anchor that had pulled her through storms before. But beneath the surface, deeper than the bruises and rope burns, the real damage lurked. The echo of craving, the terrifying brush with relapse, the lingering scent of vodka she swore she could still taste. When the ambulance doors closed, shutting out reporters shouting accusations about Nikki Newman's relapse scandal, Victor flinched at the implication, his jaw tightening. Nikki closed her eyes, hearing the reporters clearly even through steel, hearing the public condemnation that always came so easily. Another wealthy Newman woman spiraling into addiction, another fall from grace. Her heart sank as shame seeped into her veins, threatening to drag her under, but Victor squeezed her hand, his voice cutting through the noise. Don't listen to them. You didn't drink. You fought. She wanted to believe him, but a voice inside whispered Matt's words again and again. You'll always want it. Even after surviving captivity, after choosing to spit out the poison he forced upon her, the temptation had been real, terrifyingly real, and that truth haunted her. At the hospital, doctors surrounded her, asking questions, shining lights into her eyes, drawing blood to confirm what she already knew. That she had resisted, that she hadn't crossed that irreversible line. But the physical tests meant nothing compared to the silent battle in her mind. She felt the new scars forming. Not on her skin but her sobriety, her identity. When the room emptied and Victor sat beside her in the hush of medical machines, Nikki forced herself to speak, her voice hoarse, barely audible. "I almost broke," she confessed, tears trembling at the edges. Victor's expression shattered, grief and helplessness washing through him because even the idea of losing her again, to captivity or addiction, was unbearable. He cupped her hands gently, trying to steady the tremor he felt in her pulse. "But you didn't," he insisted quietly, but Nikki shook her head. "Matt didn't tie me to that chair alone, my alcoholism did too. It's always waiting. Always." Her honesty was raw, cutting through both of them like glass. The reality of addiction hung heavy in the sterile air. A silent enemy that could resurrect itself with one taste, one trigger, one moment of weakness. As detectives filed in to take Nikki's statement, she steadied herself, recounting the hours of manipulation and the psychological torment. Every detail felt like ripping open a wound, exposing the fear that gnawed inside her. Victor listened, his fury simmering. Not only at Matt but at the world that seemed eager to weaponize Nikki's struggle for headlines and gossip. When she finished, exhaustion washed over her, and Victor gently brushed a strand of hair from her face. But when he pulled away, his hand trembled again, a rare crack in the powerful facade of Victor Newman. Nikki reached for him, desperate to reassure him even while she unraveled internally. "I'm terrified," she admitted, voice trembling. "Terrified that next time I won't be strong enough." Victor swallowed hard, his voice breaking as he vowed. "There won't be a next time. I won't let him or anyone hurt you again." But Nikki knew better. The battle wasn't with Matt anymore. It was with herself. With the bottle she never touched tonight but still felt creeping into her bones. And the true horror wasn't in being kidnapped. It was realizing that recovery was fragile, vulnerable to the slightest push, and she'd been shoved to the very edge. When night fell and the hospital quieted, Nikki stared at the dark window, seeing her reflection layered over flashing memories of the flask. She pressed her hand against the cool glass, grounding herself in the present. She whispered into the darkness as much a prayer as a promise. "I choose sobriety. Every day. No matter the cost." She understood now, more painfully than ever, that victory over addiction was never permanent. It was earned again and again, battle by battle, temptation by temptation. And though she had survived this night, she sensed the war ahead would grow more complicated, more personal. Matt had failed, but he had awakened a demon she tried to bury. And tomorrow whispers would circulate through Genoa City. Rumors of relapse, scandal, weakness. Nikki straightened her spine, feeling strength return in fragments. She would not hide, and she would not give in. She survived captivity, she survived temptation, and she would survive the fallout. But deep in her heart, she feared the most shocking revelation still awaited her. The realization that Matt's plan was never about ransom or revenge alone, but about igniting a chain of events that would push Nikki and the Newmans to a breaking point none of them were prepared for. In the early hours of the morning, long after Victor drifted into an exhausted sleep in the hospital chair beside her, Nikki lay awake, unable to silence the war inside her mind. Every shadow in the room seemed to stretch toward her, twisting into Matt's grin, whispering that her struggle had only begun. The doctors had confirmed she hadn't consumed enough to trigger relapse, but the taste had been enough, a spark threatening to reignite a wildfire she feared she couldn't contain. The door creaked open softly as Victoria slipped inside, her expression collapsing when she saw her mother bruised, trembling, eyes swollen from tears she'd fought to hide. Victoria rushed to Nikki's side, gripping her hand as though afraid she'd vanish. "Mom, I thought..." She couldn't finish the sentence, voice cracking with anguish. Nikki forced a fragile smile, masking the dread curling in her stomach. "I'm here, sweetheart," she whispered, squeezing Victoria's hand weakly. But Victoria's eyes darted toward the small cup of water on the bedside table, lingering for a moment too long, as if she feared Nikki desired something stronger. That hesitation sliced Nikki with silent accusation, even though Victoria hadn't spoken a word. Shame thickened in her chest. It wasn't just Matt's attack that had shaken her. It was the reminder that one moment of weakness could destroy the trust her family had rebuilt around her. As dawn approached, detectives returned with new information. Matt hadn't acted alone. A second accomplice had slipped through the shadows, escaping before the police arrived. Evidence revealed photos, files, maps of Newman estates. Proof this kidnapping was only step one of a broader plan. Victor's rage reignited, crackling in the air like electricity, but Nikki knew fury wouldn't protect them. This unseen enemy wasn't attacking their money or power. They were targeting their weaknesses, their secrets, their vulnerabilities. And Nikki feared she had unwittingly played into their hands. Later, after Victor left to strategize with security, Nikki closed her eyes, hoping rest would stop the intrusive thoughts clawing through her fracturing resolve. Instead, she remembered the taste of vodka forced against her lips, and her mind betrayed her. Imagining swallowing, imagining relief. Her hands shook violently. She curled into herself, tears spilling freely because she understood something devastating. She wasn't craving the drink exactly, she was craving escape, from pain, from pressure, from eyes watching for her to fail. She pressed the call button urgently, asking the nurse to alert her sponsor, terrified of facing temptation alone. When her sponsor arrived, breathless and concerned, Nikki broke down completely, confessing every thought, every flicker of desire, every fear. Her sponsor listened without judgment, reminding her that temptation didn't equal failure. That reaching out was strength, not shame. Nikki clung to those words like a lifeline, inhaling shakily. She realized that survival meant confronting her darkest truths, not burying them. As the sun climbed higher, painting the sterile walls gold, Nikki vowed to expose the accomplice, protect her family, and defend her sobriety at any cost. But deep down, she sensed the next battle would strike where she was weakest, her heart, her family, and the fragile sobriety she fought desperately to preserve. The war Matt ignited had only begun.